And I'm going to ask Michaela from our board of directors again to introduce our next speaker. Thank you, Michaela.
Okay. All right, so next up we've got Zabi Najafi. He is currently a sophomore majoring in political science / comparative politics and minoring in global and international studies at Western Michigan University. He wants to be an advocate and a voice for people who do not have a voice, and he plans to work with the United Nations to help refugees around the world. Zabi believes it is important for ALD students to help refugees because refugees undergo dangerous journeys with uncertain outcomes. More than 7 million people live in detention for doing nothing wrong, just like he did. It's important to know that they're refugees because there are no choices left but encampment or deportation. He strongly believes refugees are a shared global responsibility, and he shares his story to inspire and educate others on what it is like to be a refugee. He hopes listeners will take the time to hear the stories of other refugees and remember their stories when they learn of refugees searching for a new home or needing help. Now, we'll welcome Zabi.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. As Michaela said, my name is Zabi Najafi. I'm currently in Western Michigan University, a sophomore studying political science and global international studies. I'm honored to be here today and to speak about my passion, refugees, and I want to thank Alpha Lambda Delta for giving me the opportunity to share my experiences as a refugee and to raise awareness, which is my passion. So I would just directly go start. I am from Afghanistan, a country that suffered years of ongoing war. I became a refugee and left my homeland in 2015. And during that time, I was 13 years old when I left my country. And so I traveled to India by the help of a smuggler. I traveled to India, to Malaysia, and from Malaysia, I traveled to Indonesia by a very small boat, overcrowded with other refugees from different other countries, to get to Indonesia to register myself as an asylum seeker and as a refugee with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugee, UNHCR, and the International Organization for Migration, which is in Indonesia. I left in 2015 not having any family member with me. I traveled alone, and I was 13 years old at that time. When we got to Malaysia, our documentation, everything was kind of fake, and it was not. So we got the authorities, Malaysian authorities, caught us, and they wanted to jail us because, you know, we broke the laws. But we escaped from the airport and we took a tiny boat to travel the ocean. I was in this tiny boat with all other people, and the water was rough. When the water crashed to the side of the boat, I thought that I survived war, violence in Afghanistan, and I survived Taliban. Well, am I going to sink in the coast of Malaysia somewhere? Because it was so cold, it was raining, it was rough, and it was so tiny boat, and it was so bad. So somehow I got to Indonesia, and the first thing we did was go find a UNHCR office and immigration office. I walked into the United Nations office and registered myself as an asylum seeker. I thought that it would be the start of a new life for me. It was, in fact, it was the beginning of a new life, but not the way I had imagined or hoped it would be. Leaving my family, country, and escaping war, I had a million paragraphs to share with the United Nations and the International Organization for Migration. Paragraphs that summarized my childhood in Afghanistan. But I couldn't. They registered me as an asylum seeker and asked me to get out. They said, get out, go talk to your friends. But the thing was that I had no friends. I knew no one in Indonesia when I got there. I couldn't speak the language. My English was not good either at that time, and it was in 2015. I couldn't speak English. I didn't know no one. They registered me, and I had to get out. And not knowing where to go next, I ended up camping in front of the UNHCR office in Pekanbaru, Indonesia. So I camped there for more than 2 weeks. I was like literally just on the street in front of the UNHCR office. And after 2 weeks, what happened was the IOM, International Organization for Migration, they came and took me in as asylum seeker at that time, and they put me in a detention center where in Pekanbaru, where there were more than 350 refugees inside, and most of them adults. When I was actually happy going to detention center, knowing that there is no freedom inside as well. Nobody's would be happy to go to a jail, basically knowing that you're going to jail without doing anything wrong. Nobody's going to be happy. But I was happy because I was sleeping on the streets, and the streets were bleak, and it was scary at night. I was alone, and there were some other refugees from Syria, which we couldn't communicate because they spoke a different language. So they took me in a detention center and locked me in with 8-9 other people. Like we were 2 minors and 8 other like adults in a very small room, cramped, and we were not allowed to get out of our rooms. Our rooms for the first 3 months. That is the rule. When you get there, you're locked. You can't go nowhere, even inside the yard. And after 3 months, then they allow you to go in to play with other people inside the yards, but not out of the detention center. It is locked, and it is guarded by Indonesian authorities. So we were not allowed to get out. During the first 3 months, it was so hard. A very small room and overcrowded. I was scared. We had to wash our clothes inside and with our hands, and also dry it inside our rooms. For 8 people, we were using one shared bathroom, and the water was, and the plumbing was terrible. It was bad. So after 3 months, then we were allowed to get in the yard. We played soccer. There was a lot of different people from different countries, from Sri Lanka, Somalia, from Afghanistan, from Syria, and from all the regions. After being 7 months in the detention center, they transferred me. They transferred me to a place called Shelter for Minors, a better fit for me, obviously. So I left the detention center and went to live in a shelter for another 3.5 years. Although the new place for me was better because we were allowed to get out, but it was so strict. We were allowed to get out in certain hours, certain times, and we were not allowed to do anything. So the biggest thing was that there was no freedom first, and also I couldn't go to school, study, or work. I had no idea when I will leave Indonesia. There was no end in sight. Even for criminals, there is a specific period of time for their confinement. But for refugees, there's no such date. Everybody has to wait and wait and wait. That is what I did. And I was one of the luckiest people to get the resettlement of United States in 2019. One of the luckiest, I say, because there are more than, right now, 27 million refugees worldwide, according to the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. More than 27 million, and not 300 people. 300,000 people get resettlement. Not. I know people who have been in that detention center that I lived since 2013, and they were still there. I got the resettlement because I was a minor, because I was underage at that time. I was 17. They made sure that I come to the United States before I was 18. But people who are 18 and above, people who are adults, they have been there for years. My friends have been there for 10 years now, and still no resettlement, nothing. And if they start their process work today, it would take 2 years to live in Indonesia. And I was obviously one of the luckiest people, because I knew people who came, I knew family who came before me to the camp, and they didn't have any kids. But right now, their kids are 7 years old, not having access to education, work, or anything. They are still in that detention center. So yeah, it was a very bad time for me, and luckily I got here. I started right after I got here. I started high school. I went to Wyoming High School, and they were very welcoming, and I was finally free. I could communicate the paragraphs of my life that I was not allowed, and I was not allowed to share, to talk about it in a very bad place like Indonesia for refugees. So no one understood me. No one understands the feeling of being a refugee. Refugees are people like me and my friends who just want to call a place home, to belong, to be safe, and to live without fear. Refugees are people who left everything behind to be safe. Everything, like I did, my family and everybody. People who inspires and people with unimaginable strength. I saw them firsthand. I saw people being in detention center for 10 years, for 8 years, but they never gave up. They were there. They were teaching each other. They were learning from one another. They did everything they could to stay positive, but many people couldn't take it. I firsthand experience. I saw that people hanged themselves. People killed themselves because of the situations, because of uncharted future. Nobody could do anything. And so after a few years now, I started high school, as I said, in Wyoming High School, and I graduated on May 25th of 2021. And not only I graduated with a diploma, and I graduated as a recipient of Medallion Scholarship with WMU, which was a big opportunity for me. It is important to say that now I have the best opportunity that many million kids, my people in Afghanistan and my friends, they couldn't even imagine. I couldn't think of getting here right now. I couldn't think of even going to the United States and coming here and going to school, going to university, and none of that. And it is a dream come true for me now. And also, I wanted to say that it is so hard for refugees. As an example, my family. Last year, when the Taliban took over the government, they had to leave Afghanistan. So when I started my freshman year in WMU, I was uncertain to be able to continue my opportunities, being able to come here, because everything was uncertain, because I had a lot of problems with my family. I had to get them to cross the border to another country because Afghanistan was no longer safe for them. I have 3-4 sisters. One of them is a journalist, and it's totally not safe for a journalist and unmarried girl to be in Afghanistan. So I had to do everything I could to help them cross the border. So I spoke with a smuggler in Pakistan and paid him to help my family cross the border, paid him to cross my family out of Afghanistan. And they are in Pakistan right now. They've been there for over a year now. And they're the same, uncharted. Even though I said refugees are global, shared global responsibilities, and that is according to the Refugee Convention of 1951. Refugees are shared global responsibilities in theory, but not in practice. In practice, the countries close their borders to refugees. They're not allowed. They send them back. They deport them. They have no other choice to be in those detention centers, be in camp, or go back to their countries. My friend who was living with me in the same detention center, he deported himself to a country like Afghanistan, whose Taliban is in charge right now, with no human rights being there. They have no choice but to do that. And it is important. So my family have gone also dangerous journeys because of they had to cross the border illegally. The border was packed. Nobody was allowed to cross the border. And I feel lucky because I was able to pay a smuggler to help and cross my family out. But what about millions of others who couldn't? What about people who are still there and can't get out? What about people who are still there living secretly, a secret life? Because if the Taliban finds out who they are, their real identity, guess what happens to them? They die. As simple as that, they die. Being a refugee, not easy. According to the United Nations, refugees are people who have fled war, violence, conflict, or persecution and have crossed an international border to find safety in another country. But I think that although that is true, but that's just not it. Refugees are also people who want to call a place home. They don't have it. And right now I'm studying with the hope that someday I be able to work with the United Nations and be a voice to the people who do not have a voice. Literally, when I say this, I say it because when we were in Indonesia, no one heard us. No one. We had like in some of the camps and in some of the detention center, because the situation was so bad that people every single day they protested and they didn't eat food, or there are on the social media that they have protested for over 200 days in a row, but no one heard them. Even nobody can go there to hear them. And so my passion is to someday work with them, work with the United Nations, and advocate for people who do not have a voice, and advocate for people who are like me and they undergo dangerous journeys to get to safety. Half of the world refugees are children right now, and they are vulnerable to child labor and sexual exploitations. And it is so important for people to listen to them, to help them in any way they can, and to support them, not just in theory, but in real practice. Thank you. And if anyone have any questions, I would love to answer.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And, I'm reminded of Brene Brown and the power of vulnerability. So thank you for being vulnerable and telling your story. It's really powerful. I'm so glad we chose this topic as for our service project, because it's something I hope that some of us can, do something about. And that's really the next piece of our conversation now is what we're, in privilege sitting in our universities and in our homes right now. What is it that we can do? How can we be reactive, proactive? What are some things we can do?
That is an excellent question of what we can do, actually. I think it starts with understanding. It starts with knowing who they are. It starts with understanding why they undergo dangerous journeys. To make that connection with them, to understand them, and to feel where they're coming from. That is the first step to start helping refugees, to know them better. And there are a lot of options. There are a lot of places and a lot of areas that we can help. Just as an example, I spoke with the Lee Honors College at WMU, and last year they started a project with their medallion scholars with Bethany Christian Services. When I came to the United States, I came with the help of Bethany Christian Services. They have everything set up. Everything, literally. They are training the medallion group to help refugees. They have everything set up. They only need people to join and go there. So for instance, people and college students, they can be tutors. They can go to home visit. They can go visit refugees. They can tutor them. They can be a mentor for them. Each week, they can have online classes, math class, English class. They can help them with their schoolwork, because it is so hard for them. We have a lot of refugees from Afghanistan, from Latin America, from all over the place. And this big organization like Samaritas, like Bethany Christian Services, they are in charge. They help, they do whatever they can, but they also do need help. They need help of the local community. They need help of us to manage that. A lot of people I know, they are going to schools, but when they come back, they don't know how to solve their homeworks. It starts there. It starts within. It starts with ourselves, with our own community. And furthermore, I think donating our time to understand refugees, to get in contact with them, to see them firsthand experience, and to get a connection, to teach them. And these are better than donating money. Although that is a resource that, of course, it helps a lot. It does help a lot. But if we just do that, probably we won't have that connection with refugee community to understand them. And then there are also other options that we can do. For instance, we can have groups, and we can set up seminars and to talk with refugees and share their story, to talk with refugees who are in a different country. I have my friends who are willing to talk with anyone who are currently in Indonesia and detention centers. I know people who are refugee advocates, who are refugee themselves in detention centers and refugee camps, who make documentations, who make videos of what is happening in Indonesia. Or recently, over the past year, there was a lot of protest against UNHCR. There was a lot of protest, a lot of things happening. They filmed it. They have those documentation, and I do have those documentation. They send me. People sewing their lips, people burning them alive. That is a real thing. And then to just, talk to them and ask them questions, how they're feeling, just to listen to their stories. It starts there. It is, and also we can, have groups to share, make connection, to share stories, to talk with them, and also, get involved within our own community. And there are a lot of resources, a lot of things we can do, of course.
So that's great. Yeah. I think the message I'm hearing is for everyone here, find your Bethany charity services. It'll be called something else, right? But probably every small town, every big city across the United States has some sort of center or charitable organization or somebody who's helping refugees, who's
Ye-
bringing
yes.
them into their towns, housing them, providing education and tutoring. So find yours, find your one that's closest to your campus, and reach out, right? And see
Yes.
if they need the tutoring, the visiting, the donations, or whether it's clothes or money or food or whatever it is.
Yes. Yes. So
yes.
Bethany Christian Services is big. Bethany Christian
Yeah.
Services and Samaritas. They are in every state. They are in Kalamazoo. They are in every state of the United States.
Yeah.
And recently, with what happened with Afghanistan, they took more than 70,000 refugees directly coming from a war zone from Afghanistan. And Bethany and Samaritas are in charge of those people also. Last year, I worked with a Muslim Foster Care Association and Family and Children Services in Kalamazoo. I was going every week to see this minor, unaccompanied minor who directly flew a war zone from Afghanistan and came to the United States. His name is Suleiman. And, you know, just I went there, just listened to him. I went there, you know, sat there and spoke with him and comforted him, welcomed him. And I asked questions like, how do you feel? You know, we were also trying to work. I'm a part of a student organization called Students in Action on the campus. And we were trying to hold events, little events to, you know, just go there and get them in contact, go, you know, make something fun with them, invited them, you know, in the park, anywhere. You can set up a little party thing with them just to make them feel fit in. It is so important because when you arrive here, everything is different, culture is different, language is different, food is different, everything is different, and you go through a culture shock and you feel that you don't fit in the community. So by doing that kind of activities, they feel welcome. They feel that they belong here. They feel that, you know, there are people that care, and they feel inspired, and then they get energy that, well, I can do this. They have a lot of problems with, you know, tutoring as well. As a college student, we can tutor refugees online on our own home. We can talk with them, you know, and chat, and we have the resources. Bethany provides those resources. Samaritas provide those resources. They train you to how to help them. They have a list of what we can do. They have, like, it is a lot. There's like 20 points on their list that last year they gave it to Lee Honors College at WMU. So there are ways that we can get involved, yes.
So that's a great segue to a question we have in chat, which I think you just answered, but I don't know if we want to be more specific, but online ways to help with tutoring. How do we find out more? What are the websites? What are the resources? If there's somebody in this audience right now that, like, I want to start tutoring right now, literally, what do they do? Do they find the Bethany Christian Service in their town? Is there a website?
Yes,
any practical resource they can know right now?
Yes, Bethany Christian Services, just write down Bethany Christian Services.
Okay.
They have a big website, and they have it in your local area. Search DHHS, search also Samaritas. They're also very.
Can you spell that? What is that?
Yes, Samaritas. It is. Let me search that.
Okay, yeah, you could put it in chat if you want.
Okay.
Would it be okay? Yeah.
Yes, sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Trish, for putting Bethany in there, and Duk Nang Chow for naming Bethany Christian Services is in the chat now. Great. Yeah, if we could just get that one more, that's probably a pretty good start, I would say, to connecting
Yes,
with the resources.
Excellent. That is Samaritas, and they also also have like I was in Bethany, and I was part of like Samaritas. We were we were living in community houses for the first time I came here. They have different setup. They have different community houses for refugees. They're called ILP, Independent Living Program, or Transition Living Program, where they have youth specialists help develop to help them develop skills to how to live independently, and they definitely need a lot of help.
Great, thank you. And Trish, let's make sure and add these to our service website as well, that service page. Trish, did you have a question, you said?
Nope, you covered it.
Oh, I did, okay. Okay, any other questions that folks have? And I think we've covered, I think, some really tangible ways to volunteer, to give back, to become more aware of the refugee crisis in the world and the needs and how we can help. Zabi, I just can't thank you enough. This has been amazing. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm so glad you're an Alpha Lambda Delta member. We are very fortunate to have you as a member, and I hope that we see a lot of our membership getting involved, getting engaged, and making a difference, being change makers for the refugees in the world. So thank you so much.
Sure, my pleasure, and thank you everyone for listening and for putting the time to understand who are refugees and how we can help them. This is huge for me too. I feel so happy to share my experiences and to raise awareness and to see that how people react to that, how people do not know it, and when they do, all of them are willing to help. This is a very beautiful thing to see. Thank you.